covers. So we're going to go through, and this is just really the foundation stuff. There's John. Just wait for him to get started. Actually, I'll pull up my presentation in the meantime. Share screen. So in full transparency, John and Chris's covers are in the works, and Chris's cover's actually been selected. So if we have time at the end, I'm going to show off her cover with her permission. And John's cover, we're doing some last minute tweaks and getting that ready because they're both publishing. They're both publishing in June. John is mid-June and Chris is late June. So yay. Okay. So let's just, you probably have heard the old adage, you can't tell a book by its cover. And I'm going to debunk that myth today. And we're going to talk about why it's important, especially in today's digital age, of why it's important to consider having a book cover that has one job and one job only. What is that job? Can anybody tell me?
To sell the book.
Joe gets an A+. Absolutely.
You can never really judge a book by its cover, but you can sell one by its cover.
Okay, well, okay, possibly. We'll revisit that at the end if we have time, Joe, and we've got 3 weeks to talk about covers. So, okay, what's going on here? My computer has a case of the Mondays. I've given it a workout this week. Okay, let me stop the share and figure out what's going on. Oh, I can't even do that. It's weird. I literally have no control of my computer. Am I frozen? Oh, I'm frozen.
Don't you hate when that happens?
Yeah, I'm like, nothing can move. And I'm like, oh, that's because I'm frozen. And it was a very attractive pose.
Oh, technology. So fun.
That was super fun. My computer just went and completely froze. All right, let's try that again. I said it has a case of the Mondays because I've been giving it a real workout this week. It's warming up. Here we go. All right. Thank you for your patience.
No worries.
Yeah, absolutely.
Technology is great until, it isn't. All right, let's see. So as Joe said, your book's number one job is to sell your cover. And your job really has one responsibility. And that is, in today's marketplace, bookstores are harder to get to. Places that used to be open aren't. They're very particular about who they purchase their books from. So most people are buying their books and they're looking at a thumbnail of your cover. So we're going to talk about that thumbnail and why it's important to know that your cover is scalable. Thank you. I don't even use you. And then what happens is if people stop to scroll, if we've done a really great job with your book description, then that's going to cause them to push the purchase button. And so we're going to talk about that process throughout these next 3 weeks. Next week, we're going to have Hannah here, and she's really going to talk about color and design and elements that go together and that kind of thing, things to think about in terms of how you want your reader to feel when they see your book cover. And this is not about necessarily what you want, but it's what your ideal reader is drawn to. So that's really important it's a really important distinction. Okay, I'm going to move this back over. Goodness gracious. Okay. So the covers I always say they work in 3-part harmony. So we think of a book cover as one contiguous piece of art, but in fact, it's 3 pieces. You have your front cover, which has material on it. You have the spine, and then you have the back cover. And although they will ultimately be all connected, there are 3 separate elements that we look at individually, and there are certain pieces that go on each. And depending upon whether you're doing fiction or nonfiction, there are differences that will show up, particularly on the back cover. So this, I just chose mine because it's easy to talk and it's bright. So this is a nonfiction book. It's got a graphical element. The title and subtitle always go together. So if your book has a subtitle, and the fiction books typically don't, but nonfiction books almost always do. Joe's definitely does. They have to be together on the cover. And if you see them in different places on the cover, that's not a well-designed cover. It's like they have to go together. There's also a differential in the size and where your name goes based upon a whole bunch of factors. And we'll get to talk about the front cover more. The back always has a summary of your book, which again is what causes them to push the sell button. In some cases, you'll also have advanced praise on the back cover. And then for nonfiction, sometimes fiction, we put the author photo and then a brief bio. There'll be the Highlander Press logo and our URL. And then I typically don't put this on the front cover. This was particularly a Highlander Press book, so I did. And then there's a space for the barcode. Okay, so front cover elements. So there's always at least one image or a graphical focal point, and it can be original art, like John's having original art. It can be stylized words, which Avery's first couple of books they did have a graphical element, but what drew the reader's eye to her covers were the graphical elements, because they were large and they were scripty and they were really capturing the essence of the book. Chris's cover has blended photographs. So photographs that represent 2 distinct parts of her book, and you'll see it, I hope we have time at the end to show you that, and she wanted something that was soft, and you'll see, and if I have time, I'll also pull up the original cover, not to call out that graphic designer, but to show how the same description can be interpreted 2 completely different ways. And one can be so right and one can be so wrong. So the title is always the largest font size on your cover. Beneath that is the subtitle. And the subtitle and the author's name could be the same size, but they're not often the same size. It just depends. And then if there are any attributions. So if it's important that your title be on the book, for example, or like in Avery's case, we might have, author of the best-selling books, to the one I love, we may put that under her title as well. And Chris, you could consider doing that as well. Best-selling author of To Love a Stranger. And for Joe, we could put one of your other books as well, like your top-selling book. And then sometimes we take a blurb and we take just a key element and we put it on the front cover. I also could show you a book that we're publishing for Highlander Press that I can show you all these elements on that front cover as well. but that's optional. So for example, let's just say John was fortunate enough to get Jonathan Mayberry or Brandon Sanderson or Kevin J. Anderson to write a blurb for his book, right? They're very big names in the sci-fi fantasy world area. We would take a part of that and we would definitely put it on the cover because that adds social proof that these people who are New York Times bestselling authors loved this book. For Joe, we could try to get somebody who was in the Eagles organization and played with, Bill, and that could go on the top. Maybe we get Ron Jaworski. I don't know. I'm just totally making that up. Or we get Jason Kelsey, to bring the modern day Eagles fans in on that publication. So we look at that. We look at all of your blurbs. We always, and when we talk about blurbs, I'm going to tell you, we always want to shoot for the stars and have really hard to get. We might get, there are people who are going to say yes, and then there'll be some people who may say yes and not just have time in their calendar. Question. Yes, they're optional, Joe.
Okay.
Yeah, that's we get to collaborate on that. If you have a book that's been a bestseller, I'm going to encourage you to consider putting it on. But if you're like, no, I just want my name, then that's what we'll do.
Okay.
Question. Any questions about the front cover elements? Thoughts, concerns? Just yell them out. Okay, then I'm going to keep going. So back cover, I kind of talked about this already, but we really have the summary. And what you're going to do is you're going to write the first draft of your summary and you're going to send it to me. And then I'm going to put it into a marketing format. And for Chris and John, this has already been done. And you could see, Chris, and from your first publication, the first edition, the difference in the marketing verbiage, the way it was laid out. We want, and when we talk about blurbs, you'll actually see, I'm going to go, I share some New York Times bestselling author summaries, back cover summaries, and show you why I think they're kind of crappy. And then we rewrite them so you can see and feel the difference, because we want to attract people. And you really want to create an element, even if your book is not mystery, like an element of mystery so that people have the need to know what happens. And so we pull them in with the summary, so that the summary is super important. Book blurbs or advanced reviews, they're both the same thing. And again, we're going to have a whole class just on blurbs, and having them on the back cover is optional. And so I am a big fan of having them. If you look at a lot of New York Times bestselling authors, on the back cover of their hardback, which we're not doing hardbacks right now because the printing costs are so ridiculous. We'd have to sell hardbacks for at a minimum of $40, $45. And I don't know about you, but I'm not paying that kind of thing. And so if that's something that you want to do, we can always talk about that later. Sometimes on the back cover, they'll only have a list of the reviews, right? They might have Kirkus or the LA Times or, other authors that have read the book and have given a blurb, and that just could be on the back cover. Most nonfiction, we put the summary on the back cover because if someone is looking at the cover, we want to make sure that it's there. So I've done it both ways for fiction, and we'll look at your cover and the elements of your cover and what makes the most sense. Like I tend to, like with John's cover, his front cover is depicting a scene from his book, and it's a little detailed. So the back cover is just going to be simple, but what we're going to do for added element is we're going to add like computer code behind the color. So it's faded, but you can see the code, which has a lot of symbolic meaning for his book, which is interesting. Like that's another dimension. So we can layer things. We can, we've done a cover. This cover, for example, we edited the image that we purchased to have people hanging to show that you're hanging on tight on this roller coaster. But then on the back, we did it as well, where we had the person pulling down the words. So we can have some fun with your cover if it's relevant. So, so the covers, there's a lot that goes into them, and you know, we would for nonfiction, we always put the author's headshot and professional bio, and I have done it, and I prefer to do it for a fiction as well. Go ahead, Joe.
I know you say you always put an author headshot, but I'm a little worried about that. The goal is to sell books, not to frighten people.
You get a professional headshot, and you always look good in those professional headshots. Again, we can
I don't
discuss it,
take
but
too many good photos.
yeah, well, Joe, here's the thing is I actually have to have your headshot for other purposes. So we'll talk about that on our one-on-one.
I mean, if I was good looking, I'd be happy with it, but
Everybody is beautiful. Like, stop that.
maybe 30 years ago.
No, no, no. And don't use a 30-year-old photo. John just had his photos done, and they're pretty fun. If you haven't checked out his website, you should go check them out. And Chris's
Yeah, well,
is,
that was like the first half, and we got the second half that just happened like a couple weeks ago, and it took
oh, yeah.
4.5 hours, which is
Oh
like,
my gosh. That's just doing your hair.
yeah, this lady wanted to do all this, like, she's like, oh, there was this Annie Leibovitz shot I would like to recreate, and I'm just like, oh no. We're out in the
That's for your
street,
cover.
like
That's for the
there's
cover
like
of
lighting
Vanity
all out in the
Fair.
street, and like people are slowing down, and like a crowd is gathering. It was
Well,
ridiculous.
they want to know who this famous person is.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
That's awesome. That's social media fodder, by the way. Just talking about that experience. The ISBN always goes on there, and then again, our logo and the URL. So spine elements, let's talk about spines for a moment. I don't think any of you are in this region, but a spine, it only can have something on the side if it has at least 150 pages, because otherwise, like, this book is more of a booklet. It doesn't, there's no space for anything on the spine. So that doesn't have it, but this one does. You can see we have the title, the author's name, and then the Highlander Press. We have several Calthons. So we have the logo. And so if the logo, the full logo can fit, we do that. Otherwise, we just have the Scottish thistle.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
If you anticipate writing a sequel, I cannot even count how many times I've seen a novel where as soon as they come up with a sequel, it's suddenly like completely sort of redone, and the first one doesn't fit at all with the later ones in the series. I know you can't put a number on the spine, but are there any other kind of ways you can proactively take steps to make
A second edition?
well, make your cover fit? Okay, I was gonna, you would do a second edition regardless.
Yeah, I would. Well, so if you know there's going to be a second cover, then that we would want to talk about when we're designing your cover. Like Avery has her first two books it's a two-part series, and you can tell that they belong together because of just the way that the cover does. They are not. I have one of them on my bookshelf, and if you have them handy, you can show them, Avery. I put it in you on the spot. You can do that, but if you know there's going to be a sequel or even a prequel or a series, then we would talk about that. And if that comes later, like right now, it's not written, it's not in any form other than in here, we can always do a second edition to make them, a second edition of the cover to make them be in alignment. That's very common. Kevin J. Anderson, who I learned from, he was my professor in grad school. He just re-released all of his Dan Shamble zombie detective books and with all new covers. And John, by the way, the person who did those covers is the same person that's doing your cover. So just a little side note, but he had, and I have the old covers and the new covers are completely different. and they're fantastic. Both sets were good, but they have very different looks and feel, and they were just sort of redone when he did this last series. So he had the time and the effort and the investment to get all new covers. And we're going to go into the cover art so much next week, but I'm just going to talk a little bit. So you really want it to match your genre. And when we show Chris's book cover, you'll understand exactly what that means. You really want to capture the interest. So I'm going to show some book covers here in a minute, that they don't have to be staid, they don't have to be linear, they don't have to be predefined. They do have to have certain elements that work together. You don't want it to be too busy or distracting, because people aren't going to be able to see all of the little elements. Now, here's one difference. We did this book cover. It's called Intuitive Languages. This particular cover is all about interpreting dreams and seeing things. There are over 1,000 photographs merged into one cover. 1,000. This woman, that's her specialty, and she's in the UK. But the same picture, the same tree in the different seasons, and then there's just if you can't see, but there's all these things hidden in the branches and in the water and in the, all over the book, because that's what served this book. I have full posters of these that people who did her Kickstarter got full color posters without the text on the back. So there are ways to play around, and there's ways to make it visually interesting to stop that scroll. You don't want to compete with the typography. That's another important thing. You want to look at most, you want 2 types of typography on your cover. One is usually a sans serif and one is a serif. And that basically means one has feet and one doesn't. And we're going to go into that next week, a whole host. One thing to consider, all books are typeset with a serif font, because it's easier on the eye to read, because they kind of, the letters kind of flow into each other. But they're coming out with studies very recently that for people who have reading challenges like dyslexia or things like that, actually having a sans serif font is easier for them to digest. So if that's of concern for you, then let's have that discussion before we typeset your book, and we can play around with it and see how it looks. So your cover ought to have 1, maybe 2 different types of typography, and it's got to look great small. And when we're designing the covers, that's like, when I first see them, I see them how you see them, and I also see them really little, because I want to make sure that it's not going to be like, what the hell is that? And then really the art and the typography work together. So if you have a book that is art that is like your book cover, Avery, to the one I love, I'm just using that as an example. Like, it's a very romantic feel. So they've got a nice script font selected. So it's soft, right? It's not, and John's is very sci-fi, computer AI. And so it's more, computer looking, right? Like blocky. So there's ways to play around with the typography on the cover and inside as well. So your typography is arguably one of the most important parts of the cover, because it has to be legible, it has to be readable, it has to be, people have to grasp what this book title is without having to stop and go, what the hell is that even saying? And if you go on, I should give you this assignment, go on Amazon and just go into, type in just a genre book cover, and you will find things that will make your eyes bleed. Like, seriously, it's like taking candy from a baby. It's so easy, and it's so horrifying, some of these book covers. And it's, you can't even tell exactly like, what are they trying to convey and who is this book for? Like, it's so confusing. So we don't want to have any of that confusion for your cover. The other thing, I already talked about the two font families, but you don't want them to compete. So for example, I wouldn't want to use, on Chris's book cover, I wouldn't want to use a sci-fi for her name and, a more elegant font for the title, right? And vice versa for John's. And for you, Avery, I wouldn't want to use, very hard scaped fonts. I want something that's more soft and inviting, that invites your reader in, and it really draws them in. And we've already talked about the hierarchy. Are there any questions about anything I've covered so far? Is this like so completely boring or fascinating? I find it fascinating. But so again, let's talk about color. Colors have meaning. And they shouldn't fight with each other. And Hannah's going to go into this a lot. She's got some great examples. You want to stick to a very similar color palette. And when I'm saying that, I don't want your color palette of your book to be the color palette of your website, because you're going to have more than one book and you don't want to have to change your website every single time you're doing a new book. You will change the header to have your book cover in it, but you want to make sure that you're not designing your website for one book, because you want it to be your author website with books available. Do you have something to say, Chris? No? Okay. And then if you're going to be available you're going to have your book available in all countries. So take that into consideration, because what different covers and different colors mean different things. Now, that's not meaning that I'm publishing your book in China. It's going to be available from a US distributor to people in China. And we've had people purchase our books in Australia, the Philippines, Japan, some Cyprus, Italy. I mean, we've had all Europe basically, and then some of the Far East. But like white is the color of death in China. You never want to have if you're going to sell your book in Greece, you never want to have a handprint like this, because this basically is giving a Greek person the finger. They actually, if you see a Greek person count, they'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's true. So those are kinds of things you want to think about, and you want them to be coordinating. They can be contrasting colors as long as it's for purpose. Like John's cover is kind of dark, so we're considering this kind of almost electric green on the cover, because if you remember, for those of us who are older than Avery, the original computers, we had that green color on the screen. You had one other choice. You could change it to orange. And you could do that, and it would be either orange or green. And they did that for people who were colorblind. So if you had a blue color palette and green, you could change it to orange. And if you're colorblind from orange, you could change it to green. Fun facts. And it would flash that, the little cursor would always flash. So anyway, so you want to make sure, we want it to be aesthetically pleasing. And we have really great cover designers, so I don't think that that's really a concern. But when we're looking at your cover, that's what we're looking at. Like Joe's, I already know is going to be Eagles green. Like I know that's going to be the cover, and white with elements of that. We can't use the Eagles logo or anything like that, but we can use the colors.
Yeah, and I prefer Kelly green to forest green.
Absolutely.
That's the era that Bill played in. So
yeah, well, and that's the classic, right? So
yeah.
I'm with you on that we're thinking the same color. So again, we've already kind of talked about this. Subtitle and title are always paired. They always have to be together. Your name and your qualifications or other books that you've done should always be paired. 2 colors. And again, they've got to be aesthetically pleasing. I think that's a duplicate. So here are some covers. These are all nonfiction. So, and I'll go back through for the next round of cohort, and I'll add some fiction covers in, but we're going to talk about your covers. So these are 3 covers. So I would love if you would just take a minute and look at them and tell me which one pops out at you and why it pops out at you, and just kind of you don't have to raise your hand, just speak.
Made to stick.
What sticks out about it?
The tape. My eyes
Right.
went right to it.
And that tape on the hardcover it is actually textured.
Oh,
So
wow.
it feels like duct tape.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Very expensive to recreate, by the way, but very cool. And I this is one of my all-time favorite books. I've been teaching from it for 20 since it's been out. And my cover has so many sticky and post-it notes and highlights. It's crazy. Yes, I love that book too. And it's orange. So it's the combination of that bright orange with the duct tape. We all know that duct tape holds anything, right? All you need is my brother used to say, all you need is a hammer, WD-40 and duct tape. You can fix anything.
Are your screens moving back and forth?
No.
My screen is moving back and
Oh,
forth.
that's frustrating.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
Maybe turn the screen off and then turn it back on. It could be.
I don't know what it is. I can still hear you, you know.
Okay. Well, that's dizzying though. Anyone else have thoughts on a cover? The one on the left completely breaks every rule, right? The subtitle is beneath the title, but the title actually is kind of clever. It's positioning, like they broke it apart. And in order to make it, they've got actually two subtitles: How to Be Seen and Heard in an Overcrowded Marketplace and The Battle for Your Mind. Two subtitles. That's kind of confusing. I would never have done that. This guy is head of the school of, he's got a forward. So the forward, actually, if you have someone writing your forward and they're a big name, we're definitely going to put a banner with who wrote that forward on your book. But this book, the title, the author's names are all over the place. And while it's clever, it's interesting. Like this is interesting, but I would never have designed the cover this way. I would have come up with a different way to use the positioning and put the other elements in this.
I'm gonna have to log out here and try and log back in if you don't mind.
Okay, no problem. And we'll be here, and you'll definitely have access to the recording too, Joe. But we'll be. So what do you think about the one on the right? What's appealing about it? Nothing.
The graphic is lovely. Understated. And I like the understated font too.
Yeah. And it's interesting, the bubbles coming out of the different shaped test tube, it's reflected in the eye. So it's almost like I am different, right? So that's very subtle, and I love that. And so this is really a marketing book, believe it or not. And again, Seth Godin gave a testimonial, but this is really misplaced. This really needs to be, and this is a very long subtitle. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 words. The maximum between your cover and subtitle should be 8 words maximum. So the shorter, the better. Yeah. So that's that. Okay, we can move on. So again, your cover, as Joe said, is all about selling your book. Okay, so here's what I would love to, your homework is go research genres if you haven't already done so. And I know Chris and John are already ahead of the curve on this. Go research best-selling covers in your genre. Just take a snapshot of 3 covers that you like and 3 that you didn't like. And here's what I want you to do is go into the group under this recording and just share the pictures. But I want to know what you liked and what you didn't. So I like this element of this because what we're going to do is that we're going to start to work on your new covers, and that's going to help. And so because Chris and John have already got their covers kind of in the works, I'm going to request that you go in and look at other people's posts and really like talk about you as a reader, what strikes you. Okay. And now the moment of truth. I'm going to stop my share real quick and then grab some covers. I'm going to share Chris's cover with you. If you haven't seen it all over social media, anyway. I have a social media hangover, in case you're wondering.
I just wanted to say thank you for all the social media guidance, though. That has been so helpful.
Well,
I
you've
feel
been
like
rocking it.
it's kicked my butt into it, you know? It's like, all right, you're
Good,
gonna go do this now.
good. If you guys
Super.
aren't following, Chris has been doing some really lovely piano things and posting pictures with writing prompts. So here is Chris's cover. You want to talk about it, Chris?
So um
I'll
I
show
had
the other
wanted
cover next.
oh geez. Um, I had wanted to represent the two countries that my book is about, that focuses on. It's a conflict between two countries, and the two images are represented here. So the ocean and the bear. And I love the color scheme, and I love how this looks. It turned out beautiful.
So did you hear what she said? I want conflict between two nations. I wanted the ocean and I wanted a bear. So stay tuned. I feel a little, you don't know who did this, so I feel okay about that. I might give the first one. See, no, that's the final. I think this was the first one. Yeah, let me close this. And close that. You don't need to see all these other things. And share. So this was the first iteration of this cover. What's the feeling you get from this? Like, I thought it was White Fang, right? Like, or a Western or some sort of Alaska story, right? So not everybody understands when we're talking. So and oftentimes, not often, every once in a while, you will never see the first iterations if they are like this. I did share this with Chris because it was taking some time, and I just want you to know this is what I sent back and said, this is a hard pass. And I even went and did more research about softer bears. Chris did the same. It's like, we want a softer ocean. It's like, this feels like conflict, and I'm in the fight for my life, right? So very different, very different. So anyway, let me show you the cover of the book that we have coming out on the 6th of March. You can see, like, this is a simpler, we may have seen it on social media as well, because we've released the cover. Da, 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 da. I'm just going to do a flat cover. Is that true? No, I don't want to do that. Bear with me. I'll just show you the flat cover. Okay. So this is a marketing book that came from some research that I was doing, where I was looking at the top marketing books for sales on Amazon. And out of the top 43 were written by women. Three. And so that obviously struck a chord. And so this is an anthology built about coming from a very soft place to do marketing, where it's more of a nurturing and attraction, as opposed to the used carsman or the guy in Washington Square Park, check it out, check it out, check it out, trying to get you to buy some Hocked watches. So this actually is very much based on the Highlander Press color scheme and logo. And then this heart actually is attracting other hearts to it. So there's a little bit of motion there. Very linear cover on purpose, but the colors I hope are attractive, and it goes with the theme of kind of our anthology series. So we're kind of sticking with that as we go forward in those. So this is written for women by women, but men can also use it, obviously, because it's really about leveraging things that, because I don't know about you, but if you've ever been in any kind of marketing class, especially as an entrepreneur, and all of you as authors are entrepreneurs, everything is very much check it out, very masculine energy. And that really, it requires a way more effort. And if you've ever had someone cold call you, that is in that wheelhouse, right? About your extended warranty. Have you ever gotten any of those calls? I thought getting rid of a home phone would have eliminated that, but I have more blocked phone numbers on my phone than I ever had at my home number. So anyway, that's kind of the highlight of the covers. Next week, we're going to have Hannah here, really digging into teaching about some graphical elements with the covers. And she's Norwegian, but she's actually really funny, and it'll be a very entertaining class. So any thoughts, concerns, questions?
Yes. How do you upload the pictures to the mainstream?
Okay, let me go. That's a great question. I'm going to share my screen. Let me pull up okay, so you go here and you go into the cohort right here. So we're in that space. And then, you all can do this. You just go up here and push create, and you would do a quick post. And then if I do that, I can upload a picture. I can create a poll. I can add a GIF. You can post it. And you can do this at any time. If you have anything that you want feedback on from your classmates or from me, all you have to do is go in here and ask a question. You could say, do you prefer this cover or this cover? Or I'm not sure about, this is my, I have a question about X, Y, or Z. And you can ask, and it could be me, but it could also be everybody else. If it's something that you want the greater cohort, so it's doesn't pertain to just our cohort, but you want to ask all of the cohorts, all the people who are in the community, you'd go to where the magic happens and do the same thing. And you can do that, You could say, I'm looking for beta readers, or does anybody have time to take a look at my cover? Or I'm feeling really anxious about my launch. Can anybody chime in? And the authors are very generous with their time, as you will be. So great question. Any other questions? Okay. Thought we would be done early today, Chris. So you have time for a bio break before you teach your class at 10. Awesome. Thank you for being here. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, and we're just going to keep on keeping on. All right. Have a great week, everybody.
Thank
And
you.
enjoy the Super Bowl. Go Chiefs. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.